All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our enhancements subproject meeting. My name is Laurie Apple, and I will be your host and facilitator today. If you could please add your names here for our list of attendees. We just like to keep track of that. We follow the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, which means to please show respect toward each other. Please be kind. Everything that we say here is recorded and goes online. So be mindful of that. And with that, do we have a note taker for today?
I can take notes.
Oh, thank you so much, Kirsten. I'll put you in here.
It was Anna, but
Oh,
it's okay.
I really heard Kirsten's voice. I'm sorry. I was like, I know the voice. Whoops. So, all right. And we have some new folks. So if you would please just say hi, if you want to share anything about yourself, what you would like to get out of this meeting today, that would be great.
I'm just like sort of like, hi everyone first. Sorry about that.
Sure.
So I'm just here to figure out about Kubernetes enhancements, like what sort of things are happen. I've been Kubernetes enthusiast like for quite some time now, but I haven't been involved into the communities. I'm just trying to get over here and try to contribute, or just trying to figure out what I could do for the community. Yeah, that's me.
Got it. Well, welcome. And we hope that we can provide something for you to feel engaged and get involved if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. What's your name?
It's Bharat Vijay. I'm just can't find the link of this document. If you can share it
sure.
in the chat.
Sure, will do. Put it in the chat. There you go.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
No problem. So I put a bunch of things on the agenda because I was collecting different topics from the chat and things that we're also tracking. There you go. So if you've had a chance to take a look at the list, maybe you have, yeah, Anna's got receipts kept. I also had that. I'll move this one up above. So we're both wondering about this. And this was the last update. Yeah, okay. Maybe this from Kirsten also is receipts related. So I'll put it next to the kept part. Kept item.
Yeah, sounds good.
And then I think we've got everything covered. So I would just like to run through mine real quickly so that we have more time for other folks' topics. So I think we're all fairly aware, maybe James is not because he hasn't been part of this direct discussion, but given the feedback from this group and others about responsiveness during the release cycle, when it comes to updates from SIGs about KEPs, Dims and I were actually talking, it's his idea to think about an enhancements liaison. And this person would work in a SIG. So they'd be embedded in a SIG. There's not like a secondary release team or anything really brand new. Just think of this as a very communicative member of the SIG, ideally. And they would be the contact for the release team from that SIG for the release cycle. So they would be coordinating, communicating, responding to requests, going back to their home SIG and giving updates, working with their SIG chairs and leads to get the information about what KEPs will go into the cycle and make sure everybody's aware of what's going on and reduce some of the back and forth and the cat herding. And then this role was also identified as helpful on the comm side as well. So Xander had mentioned this. So we could expand it. But it's right now it's a pilot. It's an official. We want to try it out, but we have a few volunteers that have expressed interest and some SIGs that have also met them online to say, hey, let's try this out. Those are auto scaling windows. And I've reached out to a number of other SIGs to ask. And I'm hoping that some of them are interested because it sounds like they could use the help based on past cycles. And we also have more volunteers at the moment who are waiting to be matched. So I'm hoping that this takes off and we will give some onboarding to these new volunteers to make sure that they are not lost when they get started.
So you're right, I wasn't fully aware. I could have vaguely heard of it, but not in any great deal. So thanks for that. Is the intent for this would be in place for 122's enhancement cycle, or
Yeah.
is this going to be a partial rollout? Like some SIGs will have these, some won't.
Well, some will have them, right? Because we're not going to force this on anybody. So the idea would be getting them going for 122.
I guess
Okay,
I'm wondering
sure.
how this plays into like the new enhancements process though, where like there's actually not a ton of direct interaction. Like we're not chasing SIGs around anymore. So I guess I'm wondering, how do these liaisons really fit in for the enhancements part of the release? Because I could see how they would probably make sense, like in especially comms and docs things, because that's where things get like pretty stuck like consistently. But for the enhancements process, I guess I'm wondering like what this role actually is.
So, I mean, I think we can define it. So, and if enhancements on behalf of what blog posts will be written or what docs are needed, then those will be needs to be covered. And then maybe this part of it through receipts becomes much lighter touch than in the past, which is also less risk, right?
Well,
Maybe
right
they
now we actually pre-release it's already opt-in at this moment. Like so
Yeah,
there's
I'm
not
aware.
a lot of okay.
Yeah.
But then
So what I'm
also sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that this component of interacting with the release team, because it's now already opt-in, maybe much less than in the past. So, but it's still good to have somebody who can speak to what's going on, like basic status, here's what's happening, and then communicate with other members of the release team if need be.
I suppose from my kind of experience in 121 on enhancements, there's been a couple of occasions where we were trying to get information about a particular enhancement, and the like enhancements author was relatively, they were busy, but ultimately were non-responsive to us in some way. And that might not be for any particular fault of their own. Having someone in particular, I guess, to go like poke from the owning SIG, I can see that being quite useful. And I do very much see the point that the chairs are already very extremely busy.
Yeah, so I mean, we can define this based on however we want, but I think enhancements is a good broad topic because it's what's the focus of the releases, and there are more needs than just communicating with the enhancements teams alone. But that person can still serve as a point of contact. It might just be less taxing than it was in the past because things have changed. It's a new process, and we might find things out, right, that we'll still need this contact person for. So I would define some areas for this role on the comms docs other side related to the KEPs. Be on watch for how the new process rolls out in its next iteration. And then if we see that this person needs to be more involved, we can take an action. Does that make sense, Kirsten?
I think I would have to see what the responsibilities are. Like this kind of feels like more of a SIG release thing than a straight up enhancement sub-project thing. But
It is.
I guess I would just say that I would be worried about adding a lot of process. I can't like fully envision what what this ends up being. But
Sure.
I think that the SIGs, a lot of them are very wary of like extra process. So if this is a person who really wants to be a part of the SIG, is maybe somebody, because I actually think of people who, like in SIGs that I've seen, they've contributed a couple PRs, but they're not necessarily in the SIG. Like they don't feel like they're a part of the SIG, but they'd like to get a foothold in it. Like something like this could really, I think, help them move into being a part of a SIG, being a, like, even like getting enough buy-in from other members where they could eventually be a reviewer or an approver, because they've clearly demonstrated that they're like active.
Yep.
Like that I feel like for those people, this could definitely be something, but then they also have sort of the subject matter expertise enough to be able to like look at PRs and ask authors about them and kind of check on the status of them. Like I think that could be a cool opportunity. If it's just people who have never ever contributed to the SIG, I think it can get potentially a little more iffy because they don't necessarily understand like what's going on. But we do have a problem with like SIGs don't have enough reviewers, they don't have enough active non-chairs, and there are people who want to get, who are involved, but they can't get, there's like a barrier to getting more involved.
Yep.
So
Yeah, so I would recommend that we take this offline for
Yeah,
more
yeah.
conversations, because
yeah, sure.
I do think that this is more like outside of the, I wanted to just mention it because it's enhancements related. But I face that wariness every day as a program manager. So I'm fully aware of the wariness of process. And I hear all of your points about onboarding new contributors as code contributors, moving up the ladder and getting a foothold in the project this way. So all of that is in mind, right? So we can define a role that keeps all of those concerns front and center. So if you, we have our little chat going on about this, so let's keep talking about it. I
Yeah,
think together
makes
we
sense.
can make a pretty good outcome here. Cool. All right, so let's move on to Anna's topic.
We don't have the people who have the receipts kept in the call though,
Yeah.
unfortunately. I waited last week too because I had a question, but
So this was the last input on the thread, and it was a week ago. So I'm also wondering what's holding it up.
yeah.
I guess if someone wants to ping Nabarun and Jeremy right now
Yeah.
to ask, we can.
I will.
Cool.
I'll just ask if they're going to come to the call or ask for the status.
And I guess that feeds into your topic, Kristen, about testing plan, right?
Yeah, I think Anna and I's topic is basically the same topic restated twice.
Okay.
Because I think that we both feel like it's kind of unclear of the timing of the rollout for the receipts process. Like I remember a release ago, we were talking about 122, but I think that's clearly not going to happen. And I think that there's a lot of, I guess my main concern is that it's another process change. And I think that as people know, that's really hard on authors and SIGs to understand what's happening, but also we're in the middle of helping SIGs get more ownership of their KEPs just in a general way. So I was like worried that we were going to try to roll out some new process when they're just trying to get their like feet, like, you know, like try to get their footing right now. But then I also had concerns that the KEP isn't merged. There's like a lot of questions on the KEP CTL, and I really wanted to, I guess, say that we would need a rollout plan for it. Like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, there needs to be like a pilot program or some testing, like have some authors volunteer to use it and then get feedback on that, because like this is I guess enhancement sub project idea of what's going to work best. But we also need that feedback to see like, does this really make sense for people? Like, are there issues with this tool? Like, does anything need to be changed? And then probably some iteration on that before it's something that we actually tell people you have to use. Because if it doesn't, I guess, if it doesn't work, or if people find it very hard, it could really affect the release, you know, like, so, and I think that there also needs to be like training, if like, say you pilot it and it works really well, you still have to communicate that there's a new process, do some training, have some material, and like have probably like a phased rollout of it where it's like not required, but you can use it, and then, you know, eventually required. So I didn't really see that in the KEP, and I just kind of wanted to get that, like, those thoughts on the record, because I think that it's like we have to be extremely sensitive to the people that are affected by it, and make sure that it actually works for them. Yeah, so.
That's all excellent points. So I can volunteer for this because I think it's really important for a variety of reasons. How about others here? Like, do you want to actually play a role in this rollout plan? I mean, we need Jeremy and Navarone, right?
Yeah, we
But-
need. I think we need
but-
to see the status, and then probably just even try it ourselves before we have like I definitely would like to see that. I think that probably should be included in the KEP. I think the rollout plan, because that's something that we require of all KEPs, is like alpha, beta, GA, and I think
Sure.
we could totally brainstorm for that and potentially just take it over to the KEP as well.
I mean, this can be like, I would see like your simple to-do list with your, okay, this date we have this date we have this, for it to work well. I do think we'll get not until after the release and KubeCon message. So we're probably looking at mid-April. So why don't we float target date? Like, what can we have by mid-April and see what we get? You know, like that's when we really need to take an action here, right?
As in
I mean,
selecting. Sorry,
I
when you
don't
say
think
take. Sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead,
Kristen.
James. Go.
So when you say take action, do you mean like choosing what of this, if any, goes into the 122?
I mean, starting this, like, we need a rollout plan, right? We don't have
Yeah.
that defined. So we need to think about what we would like to have in place on day one of 122. Maybe
Hmm.
we can answer that right now.
I don't think that this is rolling out in 122. I don't think that we can do that.
Okay, so
With no
Cost-
testing, no nothing. Like I don't think that that's gonna.
so why don't we start? Go ahead.
Kristen, do you see us like do you see like none of this making it into 22, or do you see like a part of this could make it in?
Personally, what I would do is spend 122, like assuming that the tool is finished, which I'm not sure if it's finished. I would like to see some like internal review and testing of it, and then potentially some just like very light testing from authors. And then potentially for me in 123, you could have a non-mandatory offering and then a mandatory offering in 124. But I think there's like a time and a place for change, but I don't think that throwing an extra new thing at people right now is going to be good, especially if we don't have like confidence in it, because I think that this really is going to need like a lot of documentation, a lot of like, you know, tutorials, a lot of things like that. I don't think that it's going to be as simple as like,
Here's a tool, here you go.
here's a tool, use it. Like it's
Yeah.
you know, like I think that we should really focus on getting it right, not doing it fast. Like, because if you roll it out too quick, if you roll things out too quickly or add too much process, people reject it, rightly, right? Because their life is made harder. So I think that we really have to like verify that this works well. Like I would also love to see some of the people who've been involved in enhancements before trying it, and saying, and like giving some feedback on the actual tool, which I don't think that we've really done. And then like kind of collecting that and then probably iterating a little bit and then trying to figure out like, how can this be broken up for a rollout? Like, is it being constructed so that everybody has to use it all at once? Or is there like, does the actual tool have the ability to like be used sort of ad hoc, not like by like some people and not others? Like, but I think that everything has to be communicated like well in advance with people, and even to the
Multiple
release
times.
team. because I think that the enhancements team is going to get a lot of the questions. And so they need to actually like really understand what this is, along with, I would say, like, we are going to need docs. We're going to need nice docs. We're going to need like probably like a webinar. We're going to need a lot of stuff to make it as easy as possible for people to see the value of the tool after we already let people try it and get feedback.
And given the feedback is already that the
Mhm.
process is quite heavy,
Yeah.
you don't want to push people further away.
Yeah.
So I think you've basically articulated a very detailed argument for a plan that's based on reason. And so what I would suggest is you should pitch this in the channel after the meeting to Navarro and Jeremy and see if they accept it, because all valid points, all doing, it's, yeah.
I suppose the one thing that comes to mind is during 121, because we had this new process around opt-in, and we had some feedback during the cycle. I think there was a particular incident from a particular instance from Tim Hocken, talking about how they felt it was there was quite a lot to kind of make sure they got right, so to speak. And I think one of the things, again, if memory serves, that we said at the time is that a lot of this will be addressed with receipts. And I think there was a general kind of inference that this would be during 122. So if that's not the case, then that may need to be communicated. I wonder
I
whether,
don't think anyone ever said that it was being rolled out in 122. Like,
I mean, that's what
Well,
the CAP says.
it
The CAP
is, yeah.
thinks it's graduating in 122.
There are
that's
statements.
not
to
even
this.
merged though.
True, it's true. Like, I agree. I think it's, well, I mean, it's outside, but that's certainly the implication that was given. That's certainly the implication I took, if you see what I mean, that we would probably have this for 122 or some
Yeah, I
version of
mean,
it.
It's in a, yeah, I'll just say that, yeah, 122 for sure was the implied rollout.
I mean,
date.
like, don't get me wrong, Kristen. I do agree. If it's not ready, just because we said we were going to do it, doesn't mean we should do it. But I think there was
Well, if you have a KEP that's unmerged and it's not like actually like finished, there's no way you can say that this is 122. I think that ship kind of sailed, like with the existing status of it. Like, but I also think that we can say it should be 122, but I think as we think about how does this look being rolled out to users and what's going to be disruptive and how can we deliver the best tool possible that's going to actually give value when there's a lot of churn in process already. I think that that's more important. And I don't think that anybody's going to be disappointed that we're not giving them something brand new to use in the next few weeks. I think that they'll scream if we give them something new.
But I don't think that's what James is saying. I think it's just saying that we need to communicate more, that if we did give an impression that the receipt process was going to roll out in 1.22, like that's not going to happen. And I don't exactly know whether we specified 1.22. Like, I'm kind of in agreement with Kirsten there. I think we carefully made sure that we never promised anything. But I think the point is to just make sure that people are aware, if we're not planning on rolling it out, that people are aware of that, is I think what we're trying to say.
Yeah, I would just worry that communication will actually be a little more confusing, because I don't know that anybody had the impression that it was going to be 122. I feel like we always kind of punted and said this would be covered by the new receipts process in the future. And I kind of feel like we can't, like, if we want to mention this receipts publicly to everybody, then the KEP and everything else should be open for discussion, since it's not merged and it's still there. And you might get a lot of discussion and feedback at a time that you don't necessarily want it. So I guess I'm not good at thinking about this, but like maybe somebody like Lori can think about this because she's probably better than this. But like, if we communicate something and we really don't have good answers for any of it, then that's also like potentially problematic. I would say that the KEP probably has to be changed, but I also think that the KEP should be updated to include a rollout like other KEPs do, because people who go to the KEP, if you look at it, it's not clear on like how it affects them like as users.
I would say that, Kirsten, it's a common sense, you got it. Like, it's about, if you're going to make a change, you need to give folks time to plan, get used to the change, give them the information about the change. This will maintain trust. So let's take this and see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm wondering.
I'll try to put together those, like, I guess, questions that I have, like in a more cohesive way, and then either bring them to the KEP or bring them to the channel and eventually to the KEP, and try to get that like more or less memorialized, because I think that'll be important if we actually try to have more detailed conversations about like where we are in the status as well, right? Because okay, I'll take that action item. Sorry.
Cool. I would try to do it soon. Like, if you need support here, this is a top priority, because you want to buy time, right? You want to know exactly as early as you can.
Yeah.
So you can plan the next steps, because you have a series of steps here, and we could do this well. It could, like the plan itself, we could create this plan quite clearly. The more time we have to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you were going to say something.
Sorry, I missed the action item.
Oh, it's okay. We're just going to say, put together a plan based on these nodes. Do it ASAP to buy time to get ahead of the steps and needs. Yeah. Is there anything more that we can resolve on this today? Because we have other topics and I'd like to make sure we get to those.
I think I'm fine. I think I have enough.
Okay.
I'm also good.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Just as a note, I scrolled back quickly and found that discussion with Tim I was talking about, and the phrasing used was hopefully with a new receipt process planned for 122.
Yep.
So
yeah,
there's some. Sorry.
No, go ahead. He was one of the users for the whole process that we brought into the conversation. So he and Alana Hashman, who also expressed that folks were finding the process unwieldy, we want to think of them as users for the process. That was the discussion that we had about it.
Okay, that makes sense. Also, Laurie, I think I interrupted you earlier. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I feel like I just interrupted you too. I think we're like, delay is zoomy. But thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Did you get to say everything you wanted to say, James?
Yeah, that was all for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Let's jump down to Kristen's item, just because it's also timely.
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking that since we're making changes and changes are extremely difficult, I'd like to sort of try to get feedback on the changes to the enhancement process that we have, and maybe a little bit more formally, because I feel like, like we're designing tools and we're thinking about how to make things better. And I think that we try to emphasize a lot with the authors and SIGs, but I also think that we might want to think about like talking to SIG leads to get a little bit more feedback on the process for enhancements, and not on the release side really, because like that's more release team, but just like their thoughts and kind of make that a regular thing for the release cycle, to make sure to like check in and see what's working, see what's not working, see what, like, is there a problem with the enhancements? Like, do they have concerns about it? Are some of their use cases not covered? Whatever it is, but just to make that a more regular thing, because as things change, we kind of have to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing, you know, like
Mhm.
like not like, oh, I remember a 1.15 when it was like this. It's like, okay, but that was a long time ago. Like, let's all like sort of have like a shared
Mhm.
foundation of the current process and the current sort of, you know,
Okay.
vibes surrounding it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is retro is for users of the process, right? I mean,
Well,
the enhancement
I'm-
sub-project can join, but you want to include users of the process.
Yeah, I
So,
want to make sure that
cheers.
we don't cut them out of all
yeah,
of the
no, I
information.
get the point. I just want to clarify the real basic information. So like your users, because this sounds like you could tee this up as part of the conversation that we just had about the process changes. You can
Yeah,
use this as an opportunity to fact find and
yeah,
get some feedback already.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so this is yeah, like so when would you like what would be your next steps here?
I think I'm gonna. I just thought of this like before I went to bed last night, so I'm like still trying to get my head around it. But I think I'm gonna probably just get like a Google Doc going like in the next day and just kind of maybe pass it around to the other like people in a meeting and just sort of get some ideas down and then try to maybe potentially reach out to the SIG leads and have something to send to the SIG leads. I don't know like what form it should be, if it should be like that sort of like I think an anonymous survey might be good.
Oh, okay.
Like,
So
to the SIG leads mailing list. I'm not sure. I don't really know, but that's something
Okay.
that I had. It was a late night thought, so
That's all right. No, it's
I'm open to all
yeah, that's good
ideas.
thought. Okay, so this is another thing we could talk about in the channel because I can help you shape the idea and then we can make it happen. But it seems
Sounds good.
it seems like a great idea. It's always good to reflect and check in with your users before you go and do more things.
Yeah, and just have it as like a regular, like just make it a part of like regular cadence of how the sub project functions, I guess.
Okay. Is there anything more we want to talk about there? Are there questions about the retro idea?
I think I really like the anonymous thing. I think we can provide like a way for them to identify themselves if they want to, but I think maybe having it anonymous would give us more like better feedback. I guess that's the word I am going with.
I just did the contributor survey very, very late, and they actually had at the very end, like you could fill it out anonymously, but then they said, are you open to being asked more about what you wrote? If so, please put your email.
Yeah.
So like if they want to have a conversation, they can put their email and we can contact them, but it's not required to fill out the actual form, which I thought was nice. So there's that option too.
Yeah.
But I'll just think about it like a little bit and then put my to-do to start a conversation on that because it was a late night idea.
Okay, so I have 6 minutes left and a few more topics. So I'm gonna try to go through some of these quickly. So the enhancements process recap, the Miro board, and we were having a pretty lively discussion about the release impacting, non-impacting. So we still need to do work on that, right? There's a lot of other parts of the process that we haven't gotten to. But what would be our next week goal, or like by the next meeting, do we have a goal, an outcome we would like to achieve with that diagram and like what it says to us, right? It's just describing our process. What question would we like to solve as our next step? Do we have an idea of that, or do we need time to think about it?
I was thinking about that one question that's right there. The sort of like, I want you to track it, but I want it to be as lightweight as possible. And I kind of feel like it's almost like can also almost be deprioritized, because it's like, well, if you want to be a part of the release, you can just participate in the entire release process, right? Like that's the default. And then that, like this lightweight option is sort of an optimization, where if I guess we don't feel like, if we feel like we have other things that we have to focus on, then I think that the optimization can potentially be left for a later date.
Okay, so I'm looking for a question that we can work toward as our next outcome. Like, what question do we need to resolve that we work on as part of that process? And then we can spend our time discussing through the weeks till the next meeting. Is there a question about the process? It's still looming over our head, how we make this thing simpler? Like, what is our next action item, our next to do here? Or are we ready to propose this already?
So I don't think we actually answered the question, not of my cap is release impacting, but I want a lightweight process, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is that lightweight process? And I don't
Mhm.
think we have decided that. So like, that's why we were defining, oh, is that an API change? Is it a bug or whatever? And I think when Elena joined our meeting like 2 weeks or 3 or some time ago, I think that's what one of the things that she brought up as the end user is like, oh, I have this bug and I had to like make a change to CAP just to get this bug in or something, you know? And like, is there a lighter weight process for her to, you know, go through the release process? This is all related to the release process, but like, does it have to be very heavy, like with the CAP and then with the product readiness review and all that? And I don't think we answered that question. And that's the most important question, I think, that we're
Yeah,
trying to answer.
yeah. That was kind of the starting question. Like, the whole goal is to make the whole outcome of the entire exercise is make the entire process lightweight as possible. So if we've solved that core question up front, I think what you're saying is like, okay, well, what happens next? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, if it's not release impacting, what do we do with these folks? How do we make sure?
But
that it's
hers was
simpler?
release impacting. That's the only that.
Okay.
Like, where this
Right.
is typed would be its own bullet
Okay.
point, I would say.
Right.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I agree that we should focus on release impacting first.
Oh,
And
okay.
then because I think that's the person, that's the end user of our process who
Yeah.
we should focus on.
Okay. So yeah, why don't we do that first? Makes total sense. I'll do fancy. So if we define that by the next meeting, that's pretty good. You know, we'll have a good idea for what that could look like. Does that seem reasonable?
I'm not sure. Like,
I mean, we don't
know.
have,
Yeah.
go ahead. We don't have to solve it next week, but if we make
Okay.
progress, like, it's just a target, right? We want to get to an outcome. If we don't make the outcome, that's fine, but we still want to work toward it so we can figure out next Thursday, half point, how far we can get. But it's something for us to work toward. Does that seem reasonable?
I think it's reasonable. I think that focusing on all of the potential release impacting use cases is probably the priority, especially as we go into the next release, and to have that defined so that we can either say, hey, like, these things don't require an enhancement, or they require this lighter weight thing is going to be taking a lot of burden off of people, and they're probably going to be really happy and relieved. So I think defining that up front is going to be probably the biggest payoff, and probably focusing on those flows in the chart and making sure that we kind of understand the sort of buckets that we're dealing with. Because I'd like to look at I would like to look at those caps again and like probably think through like what the commonality is amongst them and try to like bucket them appropriately. Because it very may well be that that's an enhancement, but it also might be like, no, like there's a reason why this doesn't require an enhancement. but there's a
Mhm.
reason why maybe it needs to get publicized in the release, et cetera, and get some review. Like, but I think we need to really try to bucket it properly.
Yep, okay. So we're out over time now. I just want to ask if James is willing to work on this with us. If you're willing to join this discussion. Yeah,
I mean, I haven't really said very much because I'm completely unfamiliar with it.
Okay.
I was just looking through the mirror board.
Mhm.
But I guess I will read through that. So this is a proposal for how it's going to look. Is that correct? With
Yeah.
the tree thing.
Yeah, and like, we're not, well, we need to file a broader proposal from what I'm
Mhm.
hearing, like a KEP, probably, if we're gonna make a big process change. So we're trying to sort the proposal, right?
Hmm.
Try to clarify what we're proposing, and we're still working on that. So this is the next phase. What does that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in kind of helping out here, certainly.
Cool.
If I can.
Cool. I mean, we're basically brainstorming the approach, and then you saw some of the Slack threads, like kicking around ideas back and forth. I've been facilitating, sometimes late on Friday nights, and then we come with a decision around 1:00 a.m. So, or 1 a.m. o'clock. We'll
My
call it
best
that.
ideas.
Yeah. Friday
Best
night fun.
ideas come out at 1 a.m. So it's fine.
Yep.
But it's also
So-
no pressure. Like, don't feel like we're like pushing you into something. Like,
Yeah.
as the enhancements lead, I think that you're gonna also have a lot of ideas and feedback, and you're a shadow, so you also hopefully can share some of your feelings about like what you saw in these sort of buckets of KEPs that may or may not have needed the entire process. It very well may be like, hey, like these should stay in the process for these reasons, and it kind of sucks, but maybe we can make the process easier.
Right.
So
So we really are out of time, and yeah, James, it's up to you. It's just an ask. You're here, you're involved, but if you don't have time, don't feel pressured. I'm going to
It's just-
ask about brainstorm activity offline, but I would really like us to get going on this in the next meeting, because I think we can do it. We'll get a lot done in 5 minutes if we just work asynchronously. So, all right, I'm going to end. Thanks, everybody, for all of your input. It was great. And we'll see you next time.
thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thanks, Laurie. Goodbye.